After the last hymn faded and the priest's words dissolved into the cold gray air of the cemetery, 7-year-old Clara stood alone, clutching the hem of her black dress. The earth smelled damp from the freshly dug grave where her father had just been lowered. She could still hear the scrape of the ropes as the coffin descended, the dull thud of dirt hitting the wooden lid. Each sound felt like another door closing in her life. Her stepmother, Evelyn, barely looked at her. Dressed in a tailored black coat, she dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief more for show than grief. Evelyn had only been married to Clara's father for 2 years, but in that short time, Clara had seen enough of her true nature. Where her father had been gentle and protective, Evelyn was cold, calculating, and sharp-tongued. As the mourners began to drift away, leaving only fading footsteps on the gravel path, Clara clutched the small stuffed rabbit her father had given her on her 5th birthday. It was all she had left that felt like him. Evelyn approached her, the clack of her high heels echoing in the silence. "It's over," Evelyn said flatly, as though speaking about an appointment that had concluded. She didn't look at the grave, only at Clara. "Now listen, girl, things are going to change around the house." Clara's heart squeezed. Can I stay in Daddy's room tonight?" she whispered, thinking the closeness would help her sleep. Evelyn's lips curved into a thin, cruel smile. "No, that room is mine, and as a matter of fact, this house is mine. Everything your father had is mine now. You have nothing here." Clara blinked up at her, not understanding at first. "But where will I go?" Evelyn leaned down so close that Clara could smell the expensive perfume mixed with something sour beneath. "Anywhere but here. You're not my responsibility. Your mother is gone, your father is gone, and I don't want a child slowing down my life." The words hit harder than the winter wind that bit at Clara's cheeks. Before she could protest, Evelyn grabbed her small suitcase, the one she had packed days earlier under Evelyn's orders, and set it down at the edge of the driveway. Then she pushed Clara toward it. "You'll manage," she said coldly, before shutting the heavy oak door with a slam that echoed in Clara's ears. For a long time, Clara just stood there, hugging her rabbit, staring at the house that had once felt like home but now loomed like a fortress with gates forever locked against her. She wanted to cry, scream, pound on the door and beg Evelyn to change her mind, but deep inside she knew it would be useless. Evelyn's heart was a stone, and no tears could soften it. Shivering in the winter air, Clara sat on her suitcase. Cars passed now and then, the drivers barely sparing a glance at the little girl in mourning black on the side of the road. Hours passed like this, the daylight slipping into twilight, the world turning colder and lonelier. That was when a sleek black car slowed to a stop. The tinted window rolled down, and a man with kind eyes, though lined with years of life's burdens, leaned forward. His hair was peppered with gray, his suit pressed impeccably, but what stood out most was the gentleness in his gaze. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" he asked. His voice was deep, steady, but soft. Clara shook her head, her small fingers tightening on the rabbit. The man stepped out of the car. He knelt in front of her, lowering himself to her level despite his polished shoes meeting the dust of the ground. "My name is Mr. Harrison," he said. "What's your name?" "Clara," she whispered. He gave her a small smile. "Clara, that's a beautiful name. Why are you sitting here all alone? Where's your family?" At that, Clara's tears, which she had been holding back all day, finally spilled. "My daddy, he died. And she pointed weakly toward the house. She said I can't stay. She doesn't want me." Harrison's face grew dark for a moment, his jaw tightening as he glanced at the grand house. He seemed to know exactly what kind of woman lived inside without needing to ask further. Then he turned back to Clara, his expression softening again. He reached out and brushed away her tears with the edge of his handkerchief. "You don't deserve this," he murmured. "No child does." Clara looked up at him, her eyes red and wet. "Where do I go now?" For a moment, Harrison didn't answer. He looked at the sky, where the first stars were peeking through, as though weighing something heavy in his heart. Then he stood, extended his hand, and said firmly, "You come with me." Clara hesitated. She had always been warned not to trust strangers. But something about this man, his steady eyes, his voice that carried warmth, made her feel safer than she had in months. Slowly, she reached out her small hand and placed it in his. That night, Harrison drove her away from the house that had rejected her. The city lights blurred past, and Clara fell asleep in the leather seat, the rabbit clutched against her chest. When she woke, it was in a vast home unlike anything she had ever seen: tall windows, chandeliers, polished floors. Yet despite its grandeur, the house felt alive, filled with warmth and not the cold emptiness Evelyn's mansion carried. Harrison led her inside and introduced her to his staff, who greeted Clara with kind smiles instead of scornful glares. A maid brought her warm soup, another offered her a blanket. For the first time since her father's death, Clara felt the tiniest spark of comfort. Over the following weeks, Harrison became more than a rescuer. He became her guardian, her protector, her friend. He listened when she spoke of her father, never rushing her grief. He encouraged her to read, to draw, to smile again. Slowly, Clara's laughter, once buried deep under layers of sorrow, returned. Sometimes, in the evenings, Clara would sit with Harrison in his library, where the fire glowed and shadows danced on the walls. She would ask him questions no one else had ever taken the time to answer. About life, about loss, about why people could be so cruel and others so kind. Harrison always answered gently, never dismissing her feelings. One night, she whispered, "Why did you stop that day? Everyone else just drove past." Harrison stared into the fire for a long moment before answering. "Because I saw myself in you, Clara. Years ago, I lost my little girl. She was about your age. I couldn't save her, but maybe, when I saw you, I thought I had a chance to save someone else." His voice cracked slightly, though he quickly steadied it. "And maybe I needed saving, too." It was only later that Clara learned who Harrison really was. He wasn't just wealthy. He was one of the city's most respected philanthropists, a millionaire who had built schools, hospitals, and shelters. But none of that had mattered to him in that moment. What had mattered was a lonely child on a cold street. Months passed. Evelyn tried to contest Harrison's guardianship when she realized the man who had taken Clara in was one of the richest men in the state. But the court saw through her greed. Her neglect and cruelty were laid bare, and she was denied any claim over Clara. Harrison, on the other hand, was granted full custody. On the day the judge's gavel struck, Clara clutched Harrison's hand with tears of relief. He looked down at her and whispered, "You're safe now. Forever." Years later, Clara would grow into a confident young woman, pursuing dreams her father had once encouraged and Harrison now wholeheartedly supported. She carried with her not just memories of loss, but also the lesson that kindness can appear when you least expect it, that sometimes family is not bound by blood but by love freely given. And whenever people asked Harrison why he had stopped for a little girl on the roadside that winter night, he would smile softly and say, "Because she needed someone. And I needed her, too." For Clara, the millionaire hadn't just arrived that day, he had changed her destiny. And for Harrison, a grieving heart had found healing in the laughter of a child who had once been left behind.